I won't let you break me. The fierce words echo from a young black woman, a dishwasher and dreamer, standing defiant in a grimy alley under flickering streetlights, her short cropped hair gleaming with sweat. Born in a poor small town, she's fought a lifetime of hardship, family pressure to marry young, grueling jobs to survive, and sneers from those who call her out of place because of her skin. When a mistaken glimpse at a beauty pageant poster sparks her ambition, she dives into a world of glamour and deceit, facing sabotage and whispered doubts about her worth. Her courage, a beacon of black excellence, lights a path to an unimaginable triumph. But at what cost? Will she rise above or be crushed? Subscribe for more inspiring stories and share where you're watching from. What secrets fuel her fight? Stay tuned to uncover her journey. The dust clung to everything in the small town, a gritty film that coated the cracked sidewalks and the sagging porches of weather-beaten houses. Maya Carter, a young black woman with a short-cropped haircut that set her apart in a place where conformity was king, stood in the cramped living room of her childhood home. The air smelled of stale coffee and old wood, the faded floral curtains barely holding back the harsh midday sun. At 22, Maya's dark eyes burned with a fire that refused to dim, despite the weight of the town's expectations pressing down on her. Her parents, Samuel and Evelyn, sat on a threadbare couch, their faces etched with years of toil and sacrifice. They'd been forced into marriage young, their dreams buried under the relentless grind of poverty. Now their relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, circled like vultures, urging Maya to follow the same path. Marry early, settle for a job at the local diner, or abandon her college aspirations altogether. "You're wasting your time with those books," her Aunt Clara had sneered at a family gathering, her voice dripping with judgment. "Girls like you should stick to what's practical." The words stung, layered with an unspoken assumption that Maya's ambitions were foolish for a black woman in their town. She'd heard it before, from neighbors who whispered she was too uppity, from shopkeepers who watched her closely as if she'd steal, their eyes narrowing at her dark skin. But Maya refused to bend. She'd seen what surrender looked like in her parents' tired eyes, and she vowed never to repeat their fate. "Maya, you sure about this?" Samuel asked, his voice rough but soft, his calloused hands clasped tightly. He was a factory worker, his back bent from decades of labor, yet his love for his daughter shone through his weathered face. Evelyn sat beside him, her graying hair pulled into a tight bun, her fingers nervously twisting a frayed dish towel. They'd scraped by their whole lives, saving pennies in a tin can hidden under the floorboards, dreaming of a better future for Maya. Now they were offering her that dream, small as it was. "I can't stay here, Daddy," Maya said, her voice steady but thick with emotion. She stood by a chipped coffee table, her backpack slung over one shoulder, packed with clothes, a notebook, and the stubborn hope she'd carried since childhood. "If I do, I'll end up like everyone else. Trapped. I want more. For me, for you both." Her short hair, a bold choice that had sparked whispers in the town's only salon, framed her determined face. She'd cut it herself last year, a rebellion against the expectation that she should look proper to fit in. Evelyn's eyes glistened, but she nodded. "We always knew you were different," she said, her voice breaking. "You've got a fire we never had." She reached under the couch, pulling out a small metal box. Inside was a thin stack of bills, their life savings, painstakingly gathered over years of skipped meals and patched clothes. "It's not much, but it's yours. Go make something of yourself." Maya's throat tightened as she took the box, her fingers brushing against her mother's. The weight of their sacrifice hit her like a wave, every dollar a testament to their love, every crease a reminder of their struggle. "I'll make you proud," she whispered, tears threatening to spill. She hugged them both, Samuel's arms strong despite his years, Evelyn's trembling with quiet pride. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in with the memories of a childhood spent dodging judgment and dreaming of escape. Outside, the town was quiet, its single main street lined with faded storefronts and rusted pickup trucks. Maya stepped onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking under her sneakers. The air was heavy with the scent of dry earth and gasoline from the nearby gas station. A neighbor, an older white woman, watched from across the street, her eyes narrowing as she muttered to another, "She thinks she's too good for this place, doesn't she?" The words, laced with resentment, were meant to be overheard, a jab at Maya's ambition and her blackness, as if her dreams were a betrayal of the town's unspoken rules. Maya ignored them, her jaw set. She'd grown used to the stares, the whispers that followed her since she was old enough to notice. Comments about how she didn't belong in a place where everyone knew everyone's business. Her short hair, her refusal to settle, only amplified their disdain. But she wouldn't let their prejudice chain her here. She walked to the bus stop, her backpack heavy, but her steps light with purpose. The Greyhound station was a mile away, a squat building with a flickering neon sign, the gateway to a world she'd only imagined. At the station, the ticket clerk, a white man with a bored expression, glanced up as she approached. "Where to?" he asked, his tone clipped, his eyes lingering on her hair as if it offended him. "City," Maya replied, sliding the crumpled bills across the counter. He raised an eyebrow, muttering, "Hope you know what you're getting into," as he handed her the ticket. The comment, dripping with assumption about her ability to survive outside the town, stung, but Maya tucked the ticket into her pocket and turned away. The bus pulled up, its engine rumbling, exhaust curling into the dusty air. Maya boarded, finding a seat by the window. The town receded as the bus rolled forward, its faded houses and judgmental eyes shrinking in the distance. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, her heart pounding with equal parts fear and exhilaration. The city was unknown, a place of opportunity but also hardship. She had no plan, only the money her parents had given her and a determination to carve out a life on her terms. Hours later, the city skyline appeared, a jagged line of steel and glass under a hazy sky. Maya stepped off the bus into a world that moved faster than she'd ever seen. Horns blaring, crowds jostling, lights flashing even in daylight. She found a cheap apartment in a rundown building, the landlord a gruff white man, who eyed her suspiciously before taking her deposit. "You're lucky I'm renting to you," he said, his words heavy with implication that her race made her a risk. Maya bit back a retort, signing the lease with a steady hand. The room was small, with peeling wallpaper and a single window overlooking a noisy street, but it was hers. Days blurred into weeks as Maya took every job she could find. Washing dishes in a greasy diner, sweeping floors in a warehouse, handing out flyers on street corners. Her hands grew rough, her body ached, but she kept going, saving every penny for a future she couldn't yet see. The city was relentless, its pace unforgiving, but it was also alive with possibility. One evening, exhausted after a double shift, she stopped at a bulletin board outside a laundromat. A poster caught her eye, a glossy advertisement for a national beauty pageant, its bold letters promising fame and fortune. Maya's short hair and plain clothes set her apart from the glamorous women on the poster, but something stirred within her. This could be her chance, a way to break free from the grind and honor her parents' sacrifice. She tore off the entry form, her fingers trembling with a mix of doubt and resolve. The pageant was a long shot, but Maya had never backed down from a fight. She'd faced the town's prejudice, her family's expectations, and now the city's indifference. This was her moment to prove she was more than where she came from. Tucking the form into her backpack, she walked back to her apartment, the city's lights reflecting in her eyes, a spark of hope igniting against the weight of her past. The convention center's grand hall sparkled under crystal chandeliers, their light bouncing off polished marble floors and velvet drapes. Maya Carter stood backstage, her short-cropped black hair a stark contrast to the cascading curls and glittering gowns of the other contestants. The air buzzed with anticipation, thick with the scent of hairspray and expensive perfume. At 22, Maya, a black woman from a nowhere town, felt like an outsider in this world of glamour. Her simple navy dress borrowed from a thrift shop, its hem slightly frayed. Yet her dark eyes burned with determination, her presence commanding despite the whispers that followed her. The national beauty pageant was a battlefield, and Maya had entered it not for vanity, but for a chance to rewrite her future, to honor the sacrifice her parents had made with their life savings. She'd fought too hard to get here, through grueling jobs in a city that didn't care, to back down now. The preliminary rounds had begun, a whirlwind of rehearsals and spotlights. Maya moved through them with a quiet confidence, her answers sharp and thoughtful, her walk poised despite her worn heels. In the question and answer session, when asked about overcoming adversity, she spoke of her parents' struggles and her refusal to let poverty define her. "I'm here because I believe in fighting for what's possible," she said, her voice clear, resonating in the hall. The judges leaned forward, their pens pausing, and a ripple of applause broke from the audience. Maya's intellect and authenticity set her apart, her short hair a bold statement in a sea of traditional beauty. But with every step forward, she felt eyes on her, not just of admiration, but of scrutiny, some laced with prejudice that she'd grown used to back home. Backstage, between rounds, the atmosphere was cutthroat. Contestants adjusted their sashes, their smiles as practiced as their poses. A blonde contestant, her gown shimmering with sequins, leaned toward another and muttered, "She's only getting attention because they need a diversity quota." The words, sharp and meant to be overheard, pierced Maya. She'd heard similar jabs before. Neighbors who called her uppity, shopkeepers who followed her as if she'd steal. The assumption that her presence was a token gesture, not earned, stung, but she straightened her shoulders, refusing to let it shake her. She'd come too far to let their bias dim her light. As the rounds progressed, Maya's name climbed the leaderboard, her scores high enough to draw attention. But that attention came with a shadow. Victor Hale, a pageant sponsor with slicked-back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, watched her from the wings. A white man in his 50s, his tailored suit and heavy cologne screamed power, but his reputation whispered corruption. During a break, he cornered Maya in a quiet hallway, his presence looming as the hum of the pageant faded behind them. "You're doing well, Miss Carter," he said, his voice smooth but cold. "But talent like yours needs guidance to go far." Maya's stomach twisted, but she met his gaze. "I'm doing fine on my own," she said, her tone firm, her short hair framing a face that refused to cower. Victor's smile tightened, his eyes narrowing. "This is a tough game. Winners know how to play by certain rules." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "If you want to stay in the top, you'll do what I say. Serve me, and I'll make sure you shine." The words hit like a slap, but Maya didn't flinch. "I don't play those games," she said, her voice steel. "I'm here to win fair or not at all." She turned, walking away, her heart pounding but her head high. Victor's face darkened, his jaw clenched as he watched her go. She'd defied him, and she knew there'd be a price. The retaliation came swiftly. In the next round, Maya's scores inexplicably dropped, her performance marked down for lack of polish, despite her flawless delivery. During a wardrobe check, her assigned dress, a sleek emerald gown, went missing, replaced with an ill-fitting one that sagged at the shoulders. Whispers spread among the crew, rumors that Maya was difficult, not pageant material, her short hair cited as proof she didn't belong. One stagehand, a white woman with a clipboard, muttered to another, "She should have known this isn't her place," her words dripping with the same prejudice Maya had faced in her hometown, where her ambitions were dismissed as out of reach for a black woman. Maya felt the walls closing in, the weight of their sabotage heavy. She stood in the dressing room, staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror. Her short hair, once a symbol of rebellion, now felt like a target, marking her as different in a world that demanded conformity. Yet she refused to break. She adjusted the ill-fitting dress, pinning it with safety pins from her bag, her hands steady despite the anger simmering within. She'd washed dishes until her fingers bled, handed out flyers in the rain, all to survive in a city that didn't welcome her. This pageant was her chance, and she wouldn't let Victor or anyone else steal it. Backstage, the other contestants avoided her, their glances a mix of pity and disdain, but one, a quiet brunette named Emily, offered a small nod of respect. "You're tougher than they think," she whispered before hurrying away. It was a rare moment of solidarity, a crack in the competitive facade, and it fueled Maya's resolve. She stepped onto the stage for the next round, her chin lifted, her voice clear as she answered questions with a depth that silenced the room. The audience cheered, but the judges' faces remained guarded. some scribbling notes that Maya knew weren't in her favor. As the preliminary rounds ended, Maya's name clung to the leaderboard, but barely. She sat on a folding chair backstage, her body aching from the long day, her mind racing. Victor's threat echoed, his influence a shadow over her scores. The rumors, her lack of femininity, her unconventional look, cut deeper than she'd admit. She'd faced prejudice before, from townsfolk who saw her blackness as a barrier, from city strangers who assumed she was less. But this was different, a deliberate campaign to crush her spirit. She slipped into a quiet corner, pulling out her phone. The temptation to call her parents, to hear Samuel's steady voice or Evelyn's gentle encouragement, was strong, but she stopped herself. They'd given her everything to get here. She couldn't let them see her falter. Instead, she opened her notebook, where she'd scribbled her dreams. Words of hope, of a life beyond the diner, beyond the town's judgment. "I'm still in this," she whispered, her voice fierce. She tucked the notebook away, her resolve hardening like steel. The convention center's lights dimmed as the night wrapped up, contestants dispersing to their hotels. Maya lingered, watching the crew pack up, their glances still sharp with bias. She'd defied Victor, but the cost was clear. Every step forward would be a fight. Her short hair, her blackness, her refusal to bend made her a target, but they also made her unbreakable. She walked out into the city night, the skyline glittering with promise and peril, her heart set on the next round. She'd come to win, not just for herself, but for the parents who believed in her, for the girl who'd left a dusty town with nothing but Adria. The city's pulse thrummed in the late-night air, its neon lights casting jagged reflections on the rain-slicked pavement. Maya Carter trudged through a dimly lit alley, her short-cropped black hair damp from the drizzle, her sneakers scuffing against the uneven concrete. Exhausted from a double shift handing out flyers, her body ached, but her mind was heavier, weighed down by the pageant's relentless pressure. At 22, a black woman who'd clawed her way from a dusty small town to this unforgiving urban sprawl, she felt the sting of every low score, every sabotaged dress, every whispered rumor that marked her as an outsider. The convention center's glitz felt worlds away now, its chandeliers and applause replaced by the alley's grime and the distant wail of sirens. Yet Maya's dark eyes held a spark of defiance, a refusal to let the city or the pageant's dirty games break her. She'd come too far, carrying her parents' sacrifice like a torch, to give up now. The alley was narrow, flanked by overflowing dumpsters and graffiti-scarred walls. Maya's breath fogged in the cool night, her thin jacket offering little warmth. She adjusted her backpack, its straps digging into her shoulders, and quickened her pace, eager to reach her cramped apartment. The pageant's preliminary rounds had left her bruised, not physically, but in spirit. The memory of Victor Hale's leering threat, the swapped gown, the judge's cold stares lingered like a bad taste. She'd fought prejudice before, from townsfolk who saw her blackness as a limit, but this felt personal, a calculated effort to push her out. Still, she clung to her dream, the entry form she'd torn from that laundromat poster, now a crumpled talisman in her pocket. A muffled cry snapped her from her thoughts. Ahead, near a flickering streetlight, a middle-aged white woman struggled against two men, their hooded figures looming as they blocked her path. The woman's coat was expensive, her silver hair glinting, but her face was taut with fear as she clutched her purse. "Leave me alone," she snapped, her voice sharp but trembling. The men laughed, one stepping closer, his hand reaching for her bag. Maya froze, her heart pounding. The smart thing would be to turn back, to avoid trouble in a city that didn't care about her safety. But something fiercer took over, a sense of justice honed by years of standing up to judgment, of proving she was more than what others assumed. She dropped her backpack and sprinted forward, her voice cutting through the night. "Hey, get away from her!" The men turned, startled, their eyes narrowing at the sight of a young black woman charging toward them, her short hair and fierce expression making her look more formidable than her slight frame suggested. The taller man sneered, his voice low. "Mind your business, girl." The word dripped with contempt, laced with the same prejudice Maya had heard in her hometown, assumptions about her place, her worth because of her skin. But she didn't back down. She grabbed an empty bottle from the ground, brandishing it like a weapon. "Back off, or I'll make you regret it." Her voice was steady, her eyes blazing with a courage that surprised even her. The men hesitated, sizing her up. The woman seized the moment, slipping past them, her heels clicking as she ran toward the street. Maya stood her ground, the bottle raised, until the men cursed and retreated into the shadows, their footsteps fading. She exhaled, her hands shaking as she dropped the bottle, its clatter echoing in the now quiet alley. The woman, safe at the street's edge, turned back, her face pale but grateful. "Thank you," she said, her voice breathless. "You didn't have to do that." Maya nodded, her adrenaline still surging. "Just glad you're okay," she said, picking up her backpack. The woman's eyes lingered on her, a mix of curiosity and appreciation, but the moment passed quickly. "Be careful," Maya added, before they parted, the woman disappearing into the city's glow. Maya didn't know her name, didn't know she was Margaret Whitmore, a billionaire philanthropist whose influence reached corners Maya couldn't imagine. All she knew was she'd done what felt right, even if it meant risking herself. As Maya walked home, the city felt different, less hostile, as if her act of bravery had carved out a small space for hope. Her apartment, a dingy room with peeling wallpaper, welcomed her with its familiar creaks and drafts. She collapsed onto her narrow bed, her body heavy but her mind racing. The pageant's next round loomed, and the sabotage hadn't stopped. Her scores were still low, the rumors still swirling, whispers that her unconventional look, her blackness, didn't belong in the pageant's polished world. A stagehand's earlier comment echoed, "She thinks she's a hero? Probably just wants attention." The words, tinged with racial bias, cut deep, implying her courage was a stunt, not genuine. But something was shifting. The next day at the convention center, Maya noticed a change. The judges' scoring seemed fairer, her name climbing slightly higher on the leaderboard. A new dress, a sapphire blue gown that fit perfectly, appeared in her wardrobe slot, replacing the sabotaged one. Whispers among the crew hinted at a shakeup. Victor Hale, the sponsor who'd threatened her, was absent from the wings, his usual smirk nowhere to be seen. Maya didn't know why, didn't know that Margaret Whitmore's influence was quietly dismantling the corruption around her. She only knew the air felt lighter, the stage less hostile. Backstage, Maya prepared for the semifinal round, her short hair neatly styled, her navy dress swapped for the new gown. The other contestants still kept their distance, their glances a mix of envy and unease. But Maya felt a quiet strength. She'd faced down danger in that alley, not for recognition, but because it was right. That same instinct drove her now, to keep fighting, to prove she belonged. She adjusted her sash, her fingers brushing the entry form in her pocket, a reminder of why she'd entered this fight. Her parents' sacrifice, their belief in her, fueled every step. The convention center buzzed with anticipation, the audience's energy palpable as the semifinal loomed. Maya stood in the wings, her heart steady despite the stakes. A crew member, a young white man, approached with a clipboard, his tone clipped. "Don't get too comfortable," he said, his eyes flicking to her hair. "This isn't your stage." The jab, another echo of the prejudice she'd faced since childhood, stung, but Maya met his gaze with a calm defiance. "It is now," she said, her voice low but firm. She stepped into the spotlight, the crowd's murmur fading as she began her performance. Her words, sharp and heartfelt, spoke of resilience, of defying expectations, of carving a path where none existed. The applause was louder this time, the judges' faces less guarded. Maya felt the shift, a crack in the wall of sabotage, though she didn't understand its source. She returned backstage, her breath shaky but her resolve ironclad. The city, the pageant, the world might try to break her, but she was still standing, her short hair a banner of her difference, her strength. As the night ended, Maya walked back to her apartment, the city's lights brighter against the dark sky. She didn't know who the woman in the alley was, didn't know the ripples her courage had set in motion. All she knew was that she was still in the fight, one step closer to her dream. The pageant's next round waited, and with it, a chance to prove that a small-town black woman with a bold haircut could change everything. The convention center's grand hall glowed under the blaze of spotlights, the air thick with anticipation and the hum of a restless audience. Maya Carter stood backstage, her short-cropped black hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights, her sapphire gown hugging her frame with newfound elegance. At 22, a black woman who'd fought her way from a dusty small town to this glittering stage, she felt the weight of every step she'd taken, every grueling job, every judgmental stare, every moment of defiance that had brought her to the pageant's semifinal round. The crowd's murmurs filtered through the velvet curtains, a reminder of the stakes. Maya's dark eyes flickered with resolve, but beneath her poised exterior, doubt gnawed. The sabotage she'd faced, low scores, swapped dresses, cruel rumors, had eased, but the pressure hadn't. She was still an outsider in this polished world, her presence a challenge to its unspoken rules. The semifinal round was a crucible, each contestant vying for a spot in the top five. Maya had prepared tirelessly, her answers memorized, her walk perfected despite the ache in her feet from worn heels. She'd felt a shift recently, fairer scores, a proper dress, the absence of Victor Hale's menacing shadow, but the battle wasn't over. Backstage, the other contestants adjusted their gowns, their smiles sharp with competition. Maya caught a glance from one, a white woman with cascading curls who whispered to another, "She's still here? They must be desperate for diversity." The words laced with the same prejudice Maya had faced her whole life, neighbors calling her uppity, city strangers assuming she was less, cut deep, but she straightened her spine, refusing to let them shake her. The stage manager called her name, and Maya stepped into the spotlight, the crowd's applause a fleeting warmth. Her performance was flawless, her voice steady as she spoke of resilience, her movements graceful despite the borrowed gown. The judges' faces, usually stern, softened slightly, their pens moving with approval. Maya returned backstage, her heart pounding with cautious hope. She was climbing the leaderboard, her dream within reach. But as the scores were tallied, a glitch in the system, a technical error, the announcer called it, slashed her points, dropping her to the edge of elimination. The crowd gasped, murmurs rippling through the hall. Maya stood frozen, her breath shallow, as the reality hit. She might not make the final. Backstage, the chaos of the announcement swirled around her. Contestants exchanged glances, some smug, others sympathetic. A stagehand, a white woman with a headset, approached to adjust Maya's gown for the next segment, her hands brisk. "You should have gone with longer hair," she said, her tone casual but pointed. "It'd suit someone like you better." The comment, dripping with the assumption that Maya's short hair and blackness didn't fit the pageant's mold, stung like a slap. Maya clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms, but said nothing. She'd heard it before, from townsfolk who saw her ambition as defiance, from city crews who dismissed her worth. This was just another jab, but it landed harder now, with her dream teetering. She slipped into a quiet corner of the dressing room, the mirror reflecting her tense face. The sapphire gown, a rare gift after weeks of sabotage, felt like a mockery now. Her scores, her chance at the top five, had been stolen by a glitch that felt too convenient. The weight of it all, her parents' sacrifice, her grueling city jobs, the prejudice she'd fought at every turn, crashed over her. She sank onto a stool, her hands trembling as she pulled out her phone. The urge to quit, to walk away from this rigged game, was overwhelming. She dialed home, her fingers shaking, needing the anchor of her parents' voices. "Maya?" Samuel's voice came through, rough but warm, a lifeline across the miles. "What's wrong, baby girl?" Her throat tightened, tears spilling before she could stop them. "I'm done, Daddy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They messed up my scores. Some error, they said. But I know it's not right. I can't keep fighting this." The words poured out, raw and heavy, carrying the exhaustion of months in a city that didn't want her, of a pageant that seemed determined to break her. "I thought I could do this, but maybe I don't belong here." Samuel was quiet for a moment, the silence filled with the weight of his love. "Maya, listen to me," he said, his voice steady, the same voice that had guided her through childhood. "You don't need to win to prove anything. You're already more than this town, this pageant ever expected. You're you, strong, smart, different. That's enough. Just step out there one more time, as yourself. His words, simple but fierce, cut through her despair, a reminder of the tin can of savings, the years of sacrifice that had brought her here. Maya wiped her eyes, her breath shaky but steadying. I don't know if I can, she said, but the fire in her chest flickered back to life. Samuel's belief, her mother's trembling pride, were anchors she couldn't let go. She hung up, her hands still trembling, but her resolve hardening. The pageant wasn't fair. Nothing in her life had been, but she'd never back down from a fight. She stood adjusting her gown, her short hair a bold frame around her determined face. The mirror reflected a woman who'd washed dishes until her hands bled, who'd faced down judgment in a small town, in a big city. This was her stage, glitch or not. Backstage, the other contestants prepared for the next announcement, their eyes flicking to Maya with a mix of curiosity and disdain. She ignored them, her focus narrowing to the final round ahead. The stage manager called for the remaining contestants, and Maya stepped forward, her chin high. The technical error had nearly cost her everything, but she wouldn't let it define her. She thought of her parents, of the small-town whispers that tried to cage her, of the city's cold indifference. She'd come too far to let a rigged system stop her now. The hall buzzed as the semi-final results were finalized, the crowd's energy electric. Maya stood in the wings, her heart pounding, but her resolve ironclad. A crew member, a young white man, adjusted a light nearby, muttering, "She's still here. Guess they're keeping her for the drama." The jab, another echo of the prejudice that followed her blackness, her short hair, her defiance, barely registered. Maya's eyes were on the stage, where the spotlight waited. She'd give them a performance they couldn't ignore, glitch or no glitch. As the announcer called the top five, Maya's name hung in the air, just making the cut. The crowd cheered, but the judges' faces remained guarded, some scribbling notes that hinted at lingering bias. Maya stepped forward, her gown catching the light, her short hair a banner of her difference. She didn't know what had shifted the pageant's tides, didn't know a powerful ally was watching from the shadows, but she felt the change, a crack in the wall of sabotage. The final round loomed, and with it, a chance to prove she was more than a small-town girl, more than the prejudice that tried to break her. She'd fight, not for the crown, but for the dream her parents had bet everything on. The convention center's grand hall pulsed with electric energy, its stage awash in golden light as thousands of eyes fixed on the final five contestants. Maya Carter stood center stage, her short-cropped black hair a bold crown under the spotlight, her sapphire gown shimmering with every measured step. At 22, a black woman who'd clawed her way from a forgotten small town to this national stage, she carried the weight of every battle, grueling city jobs, whispered prejudice, a rigged system that had nearly broken her. Yet her dark eyes blazed with unyielding fire, her smile radiant with a confidence honed through hardship. The audience leaned forward, their cheers a tidal wave, sensing something extraordinary in her presence. Maya had survived sabotage, doubt, and a near elimination. Her father's words, "Just step out there as yourself," still echoing in her heart. Tonight was her moment, not just to win, but to prove she was more than the world's low expectations. The final round demanded everything: poise, intellect, heart. Maya moved through the choreography with grace, her worn heels forgotten, her movements fluid as if the stage belonged to her. When her turn came for the final question, the host asked, "What defines true beauty?" Maya paused, her gaze sweeping the crowd, her voice steady and clear. "True beauty is courage," she said. "It's standing up when the world pushes you down, loving yourself when others don't, and fighting for your dreams no matter where you start." Her words, raw and resonant, drew gasps, then thunderous applause. The judges' pens froze, their faces alight with something new: admiration. Maya's short hair, once a mark of her difference, now framed a face that commanded the room, defying every stereotype that had tried to cage her. Backstage, the other contestants stood in silence, their earlier disdain replaced by uneasy respect. Maya felt their eyes but kept her focus forward, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The sabotage was gone. Victor Hale's shadow lifted, the scores fairer. But the weight of the moment pressed hard. She'd fought prejudice her whole life, from small-town whispers that her blackness made her less, to city stagehands who sneered at her unconventional look. Tonight, she wasn't just competing for a crown, she was rewriting what it meant to belong. The announcer's voice boomed, calling the finalists forward. Maya stepped into the spotlight, her chin high, her smile unwavering. The crowd held its breath as the winner was named. Maya Carter. The hall erupted, cheers shaking the rafters as confetti rained down. Maya's eyes stung with tears, her hands trembling as she accepted the crown, its weight light compared to the burdens she'd carried. She was the first short-haired beauty queen, a black woman who'd shattered the mold, her victory a beacon for those who'd been told they didn't fit. The audience roared, some standing, others wiping tears, moved by the small-town girl who'd conquered a national stage. On the press podium, under blinding camera flashes, Maya gripped the microphone, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. I was just a small-town girl with nothing but a dream and a haircut that made me different, she said, her words cutting through the noise. People doubted me. They tried to break me, but I never gave up. And if I can do it, you can do it. No matter where you come from, no matter what they say about you, hold on to your dream. The crowd surged, her words igniting a fire that spread beyond the hall, a mantra for dreamers everywhere. A reporter, a white man with a skeptical smirk, leaned forward. Do you think your win is due to diversity policies? He asked, his tone implying her victory was unearned, a jab at her blackness that echoed the prejudice she'd faced since childhood. Maya met his gaze, her smile unshaken. I won because I earned it, she said, her voice firm. My heart, my fight, my truth. That's what brought me here. The reporters clapped, the question drowned by their approval, but the sting lingered, a reminder of the world she'd navigated to reach this moment. Later, as the cameras faded, a woman approached, middle-aged, silver-haired, her tailored coat speaking of wealth. Miss Carter, she said, her voice warm but commanding. I'm Margaret Whitmore. Maya's breath caught. She recognized the name, a billionaire philanthropist, but didn't know why she was here. You saved me in that alley, Margaret continued, her eyes soft with gratitude. I've been watching you since, and your strength, your character, moved me. I made sure the pageant played fair. Maya's heart raced, the pieces falling into place. The fair scores, the new gown, Victor's absence. Margaret had been her unseen ally, clearing the corruption that threatened her dream. Maya nodded, her throat tight. Thank you, she whispered, the weight of the revelation grounding her victory in something deeper, her own courage, unknowingly rewarded. Margaret smiled, handing her a card. You're just beginning, she said, before vanishing into the crowd. Days later, Maya returned to her small town, the dusty streets now alive with pride. The same neighbors who'd once whispered she was too uppity now cheered, their faces alight with awe. Tasha, a childhood friend who'd once mocked her ambition, approached, her eyes downcast. Maya, I was wrong, she said, her voice soft. You proved us all wrong. Maya smiled, forgiving, but not forgetting the years of doubt. Samuel and Evelyn waited at the old house, their arms open, tears streaming as they hugged her. You did it, baby girl, Samuel said, his voice thick with pride. Evelyn clutched her, whispering, We always knew. The tin can of savings, their life's work, had bought her this moment, and Maya's heart swelled with gratitude. The town square buzzed with celebration, banners proclaiming their hometown hero. Maya stood before them, her crown glinting, her short hair a symbol of her defiance. Her words from the podium, I can do it, you can do it, had spread across the country, a rallying cry for the overlooked, the underestimated. She looked out at the crowd, seeing faces like hers, young, dreaming, different, and knew her victory was theirs too. She'd fought not just for herself, but for every girl told she wasn't enough, every dreamer held back by prejudice or circumstance. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of gold. Maya stood with her parents, their hands clasped. The town, once a cage, now felt like a beginning. Her journey had started with a haircut, a dream, and a refusal to bend. Now she was a beacon, her legacy just beginning. The world would know her name, not just as a beauty queen, but as a symbol of what courage could achieve. Thank you for joining us on this inspiring journey with Maya Carter, from small-town dreamer to national icon. We hope Maya's story of courage, defiance, and triumph over prejudice moved you as much as it did us. What did you think of her bold stand against the odds? How did her words, "I can do it, you can do it," resonate with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We can't wait to hear them. Your feedback inspires us to keep telling powerful stories, so let us know where you're watching from. If you loved Maya's journey, hit that like button and subscribe for more uplifting tales. Don't miss our next video. Ring the notification bell to stay updated. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community, and we'll see you soon with another unforgettable story. Keep dreaming big.